Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 7 of season 3 of Lower Decks. And I think it was a mathematically perfect episode. It tied up a loose end from way back in season 1, it continued a certain storyline of a certain character, and also made its own separate story out of it. Most of this episode did not have the usual Cerritos crew, it was all about one character from way back in season 1 who I kind of hoped would come back, and they kind of made a redemption story for that character, even though there was a surprise at the end, which I kind of didn't see coming. I remember thinking that it is all kind of too convenient, too perfect. I was going to complain about that, but then they did the surprise, which was really funny, and it all tied up to something else that they were setting up in a previous episode. And the episode also had a lot of references to all kinds of other movies, not Star Trek. There was a reference to Castaway and to Avatar, and even there was a poke against that recent show about the androids raising kids on some planet. It was called Raised by Wolves, and it also had a giant snake flying in the sky. So when they showed the flying snake in this episode and said it's stupid, it probably was a poke at that, but I guess it might have been a complete coincidence, because one of the jokes in this episode was that all the animals on this planet all have wings and they're all flying. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this all begins with a flashback to way back in the final episode of season 1, when Peanut Hamper, the exocomp, who was a Starfleet officer, refused to sacrifice herself to save the ship and just escaped, and then was left flying out in the middle of space for eternity. I remember I said back then that I wish it would come back somehow, and that's exactly what this episode did. So they show us that Peanut Hamper was collecting the debris to build itself a small ship, basically just a nacelle and a small deflector, and it also made itself a small doll for companion, which looks like another exocomp. So that's an obvious reference to that movie Castaway, when Tom Hanks painted the face on a ball and was talking to it as a friend and all of that. So there was a joke about that. And then Peanut Hamper manages to warp itself to some nearby planet and then crashes on the planet and then is rescued by the primitive people on the planet, who are basically giant birds, and all the animals on that planet have wings, and so that's kind of funny because we see flying turtles and flying pigs. And a lot of this planet also reminded me of the movie Avatar, especially in all those night scenes when everything is glowing and there's kind of a love story developing between Peanut Hamper and one of those bird people, which was also kind of funny because of how ridiculous it was, and because it's kind of a parody of all kinds of movies like that, and also a lot of Star Trek episodes whenever someone from the crew gets stuck on a primitive planet and ends up helping those people and all of that. You know, there was an episode in the original series when Kirk got stuck on some planet with some North American Indians, and there was an episode of TNG when Data was stuck on a primitive Bronze Age planet. So there was a lot of similarities to all kinds of stories like that, and also it kind of felt fresh and original at the same time. So I was really enjoying this episode. And there's always a lot of good attention to detail, like the way the exocomps have their own replicators. They can replicate any tools they want. And here Peanut Hamper is able to replicate candy for kids and stuff like that. So a lot of attention to detail of how the exocomps from TNG actually work. Even though those exocomps couldn't really talk, they were only bleeping like R2D2, and here she can talk, so obviously an upgrade of some kind. So anyway, she's living with these bird people for I guess about 2 years, so that it will catch up to the time frame of the rest of the show. And she discovers that these bird people used to have warp technology, but they chose to abandon it and live a simpler life, and so that reminds me of the Star Trek movie Insurrection, who had the Baku people, who also used to have warp technology, but they chose to abandon it to live a primitive life away from space politics or whatever, and so there's some similarities to that, and there's some kind of underground cave in which they stored all their old spaceships. And then those same space pirates we saw previously show up to steal those starships, and then Peanut Hamper, having been redeemed and she now understands love and the value of life and all of that, she now decides to sacrifice herself to save these people. And she also sent a signal to Starfleet to help, and then she basically saves the day against those aliens, one of whom kind of sounds like Martok for some reason. And then the Cerritos shows up just in time to witness her saving the entire planet and being a hero and all of that. And that was the moment when I was thinking all of this is kind of too convenient. This whole redemption story could have worked, but they wrote it in kind of a rushed way that seems awfully convenient, like lazy writing. But then it turns out that Peanut Hamper orchestrated all of that she's the one who called those space pirates so that they will come to steal those ships so that she can save the planet from them in front of Starfleet to look like the hero, so that Starfleet will take her back. And so she basically betrayed everyone again. So that was a pretty funny twist, and I didn't see it coming for some reason, even though I should have. And in the very end, they lock her up in that prison inside the Daystrom Institute, where they keep all the evil robots, including Agamos, who we saw in a previous episode. And I'm kind of wondering if they're setting something up, maybe in some future episode, all these evil computers will somehow collaborate and escape together and form a giant evil robot or something. I guess it might happen. I'm kind of hoping maybe Lore's head is somewhere there as well. Maybe he'll become their leader and they all break out together or something like that. I guess it remains to be seen. So to summarize, I think it was a very entertaining episode. It felt really fresh, while simultaneously tying up loose ends from previous episodes and tying things together and possibly setting up future stuff as well. And this episode also felt really fresh because it was kind of its own story for most of it without the usual crew, and it had a lot of funny references to all these other movies, and so overall I found it really enjoyable. A lot of the jokes were funny in my opinion, so overall I really enjoyed it. And the twist in the end was very funny as well. So I would say it's an 8 out of 10 episode. Not perfect because it wasn't really that unique of a story. A lot of it was obviously inspired by all kinds of other movies, and so it wasn't really a brilliant new science fiction story of any kind, and that's why I cannot give it a really high score, but it was still a very entertaining episode in my opinion. Let me know what you think and we can discuss all of this in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.